thanks for joining me. This video is going to be directed for you folks that may have been fishing for a while. You're catching fish, but you've kind of hit a wall. You're in a rut. You're thinking, geez, I need to start catching a few more fish and I should be catching a few bigger fish. Well, if that's you, this is the video that you need to watch. We're going to talk about finding new areas, finding new water, looking for new fish, finding new fish, and how to catch those fish. All right, we're tucked in here, and today we're going to talk about actually becoming a better angler. And some of the things that I'm going to talk about, you're not going to like. It's not the bait, it's not the colors you're using, it's not when you're fishing, it's your technique and the areas that you're fishing. We're kind of put that into perspective, how your skills play into your daily fishing, the types of water that you're fishing, the areas that you're fishing. Because sometimes you may be passing up areas that hold big fish or a lot of fish, but you don't have the skills to maybe pitch a bait or get a bait into a certain area, or you don't feel comfortable with the bait you have fishing in heavy cover, so on and so forth. And always be searching for new techniques and always be searching to improve your game. The first thing I want you to do is take the rods and reels that you have on your boat. I'm not asking you to buy anything new or anything else, but look at those and experiment with each rod and reel combo, making sure that the equipment is paired properly with the proper line, the proper leader, and the proper combinations for each individual bait. Another big problem that I see with inexperienced anglers, they're coming out throwing the right bait with the wrong gear. You can't throw a plastic frog with the same rod that you're going to throw a chatterbait on, or that you're going to do drop shotting with. Now, sometimes you guys may have the right rod and the right reel. They're just not set up properly, or you're not using the right bait with them, or you don't have the right line and leader combination. So think about that. So after you have assessed your tackle, and you think you've got the right reels on the right rods and the right rods paired up with the right line, and you're fishing the right baits on that particular outfit, I want you to think about your casting skills. I'm here on the California Delta, and this is especially a tough place to fish when it comes to having a lot of wind out here. It is a target-rich environment, meaning that a lot of the fish are holding very close to cover, whether it be submerged vegetation or tules or whatever it may be, docks. And precision casting is very important. There are 4 casts that you need to know. One of them is a pitch cast, an underhand pitch cast. Some of you may call it flipping, but pitching, flipping, sidearm casting, overhead casting, and skipping. Now let's go over pitching, sidearm, and skipping. The main reason that I use those casts is because I want to keep that bait low to the water and it's out of the wind. The overhand cast, you can use that cast on certain baits and certain times, but when you get that bait coming up overhead and it's, let's just say over a bank, over the height of the bank, or over tules, that's where you're going to have problems with wind catching that bait, and you're going to lose not only all of your distance, but you're going to lose your accuracy. And distance and accuracy are extremely important when it comes to catching bigger fish out here. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. Let's say you're a punch guy or a flip guy, and you could, flip something into a right on the edge of some submerged vegetation within a couple inches of that. When you're 30 feet away, you want to work on getting out 40, 50, or even 60 feet from that target and be able to pitch that bait into that exact location. The better you are at that pitching, skipping, sidearm casting, the more accurate you are at farther distance, the more fish you're going to catch. Now once you've got your rods, your reels, your baits, you're getting to be a better caster. We're going to talk about how to approach new areas. Now, on the Delta, everything looks great, and a lot of lakes that we fish, same thing. There's always points. There's rock walls and ledges and docks and things that all look good. You never know that those places are good until you go and try them. So we want to look logically about the prospective areas that we're we're going to be fishing. Now today, I'm going to just tell you right now, I'm going to turn the camera around and I'm going to point it towards an island that we're going to break down and fish. And this island looks exactly like every other stinking island out here on the Delta. Does it hold fish? I've been out here a couple times. I've caught a few fish. It's not, you know, don't try to find this island on the GPS or something and think that this is the magic island. It's just an island that has everything on it that's going to help me to explain to you guys how to approach it, where to fish it, when to fish what areas, so on and so forth. And that island is this island right over here, the one that I'm pointing at. You can see there's a point over here, there's another point, there's a point around the side. It's got 3 or 4 points on it. We got a lot of wind today, so you guys are going to have to bear with me. You're burning down the bank and you want to find some new water, and you see that island, you say, I am going to fish that island and I'm going to see if there's any fish on there, and maybe that could be my new spot. Well, the first thing you have to do is be able to approach that island correctly. You've got to fish it quickly and efficiently so that if there are fish on that island, you're going to know it. You're going to catch a few fish, you're going to see them, you're going to get bit, whatever, but you're going to know there's fish there. And that's going to give you the knowledge to how long you are going to stay on that island. Obviously, if you go there and you find it's barren, it's not what you want, there's no bait, there's no fish, you don't want to spend an hour there. You want to spend 5 or 10 minutes there and get the heck out of there. We don't want to overrun prime water. So if we're going to start at a point, we want to stop the boat, the big motor, 50 yards out from that point and move in on our trolling motor. We don't want to overrun prime water. And as you make your approach, you're carefully evaluating the proper bait selection. We may look from where we're sitting right now and say, that's a nice deep bank. I'm going to throw a deep diving crankbait and I'm going to get up there and just start running that bank. But as we get up there, we may see the vegetation that we didn't see from a distance is a little thicker than we thought. So as we're moving up there and mentally we're thinking, I'm going to throw a crankbait as we're going up there, that's not going to work. You're going to have to know, I need to put this crankbait down, I need to throw a chatterbait, I need to throw a T-rigged worm or whatever it is, maybe a topwater that's going to come over the top of that vegetation. And you're going to have that all set up so when you drift into that prime area, your first couple casts, especially on a point, those are going to be super important. You want to have the right bait, you want to make the right cast. I want you to be comfortable with working with 4 or 5 rods. And I'm going to read verbatim what I put down here when I was thinking about this thing so that you guys will get the thought process behind why I talk about having fewer rods on the boat. Okay, be comfortable with working with no more than 4 or 5 of your confidence baits at one time. Choose your arsenal with a variety of baits that will cover various depths and speed. That's pretty logical. So using fewer baits, you get to know those baits intimately, and then think about entering a tackle shop the next time you go into a tackle shop. You're going to go in with a whole different idea because you're fishing out here and you're thinking about how that bait is working and why it's giving you problems or why it's not catching fish, or maybe it's tangling up in vegetation, it's not coming through like you should. When you go into that tackle shop, you're not going to be looking at baits because they're in a nice package or a pretty color. You're going to be thinking to yourself, okay, I'm fishing this chatterbait a whole lot and it's doing this, this, and this for me that I really like, but these are problems that I'm having with this bait. You're going to be looking for other baits at that point that are going to solve that problem. And you may be a chatterbait guy, it may be a different chatterbait that you need, it may be switching from a chatterbait to a crankbait or a jerkbait, whatever it is, you're going to go in there with logical thinking and you're not going to walk out of that tackle shop with 5 baits that you use one time and never use again. Or if you do buy 5 baits, you've got a better chance of finding one of those baits that is really going to fit the bill on what you're used to fishing. So that's why I like to use fewer baits, especially when you're starting off bass fishing. Get to know those baits really well and get to know if that's going to be a bait that you like to fish or a bait that you're going to put on the shelf and you're not going to buy 10 more of these every time you go out to a tackle shop. All right, I know that's a lot to think about, but start thinking about that. You know, before you go to bed at night, think about that a little bit. You wake up in the morning, think about what I've been talking about. Think about if you're ready to make these decisions and these next steps, because what we're going to do now is we're going to go out to that island. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to fish that island, and we'll talk about approaching it, and I want to talk about fishing an offshore ledge on that island. Now, most of the people that fish this island, I would say 80%, they're going to go up to it and they're going to run the bank, and if it's too shallow, they're either going to throw a frog a little bit, see if they can catch a fish, or throw something over the top of that, maybe punch into it, but they're going to run the bank, when in actuality, a lot of the fish that are on this island are behind you, and we've got to run out to the edge of that island and fish the edge of the island. I've got 7 rods set up with baits on here, and I'm going to talk about those 7 baits. Now, when I get out here, I'm probably only going to fish 3-4 baits, and that's, remember I talked to you about scaling down your bait arsenal, but I want to go over a few extra baits because your baits don't have to be my baits. So when we get over here, if I'm thinking the fish are inside in the shallow water, obviously here on the Delta, I'm going to have a frog rod. That's number 1. I probably would have a punch rod too, but we're not going to talk about punching today. I'd also want a topwater bait, like a moving bait, like a whopper plopper. Maybe we have a foot of the vegetation's 6 inches to a foot underwater. That whopper plopper or a buzz bait would be a good bait to cover water. Also, a Texas rigged worm, that's another thing, unweighted. You could throw it into some pretty heavy cover, whether it's a foot, 2, maybe 3 feet deep. You can get that thing out there and run it through some cover. Now, after we get out of that flat and onto the ledge, more open water. If I'm in open water, you may think of throwing a crankbait out there. I have been using a lot of jerk baits. I don't use jerk baits a lot during the summer here on the Delta generally, but this year has been a little bit of a, I'll use a big word, an anomaly for me. I really don't even know what that word stands for, but I've heard somebody else say it, and I think it means it's kind of an odd thing. But anyhow, I'm using this chatterbait, I'm using this jerk bait because I have been catching some good fish in the 3, 4, and 5 pound class on this, where generally I'm catching a lot of small fish, but that jerk bait is a good one. And obviously a chatterbait here on the Delta, and that chatterbait is going to cover a lot of water for us. It's going to cover the areas that we can't get in there with a crankbait that has exposed, 2 exposed treble hooks. That chatterbait will run through that water. So I'm going to drop the frog rod. We're going to put that frog rod underneath. I'm going to be throwing a whopper plopper if we get inside. I'm going to be throwing a worm. I'm going to take the crankbait out of the mix. We're going to have 4 rods: a whopper plopper, a worm, a jerk bait, and a chatterbait. And we're going to work those 4 baits from top to bottom, inside to out, and those will cover everything we need. And remember, if you have those same 4 baits on and you're out here and you're only using those 4 baits, you're going to really get to know what each one of those baits will do. You're actually giving each bait a little better chance to catch a fish and tell you if that's the right bait or the wrong bait. I'm going to try to give you all the information that I can so that when you're pulling up to these areas, you're pulling up properly and you're fishing them correctly. Let's do it. I want to fish that point just for a few minutes. I want to fish that next point. And then what I'm going to do is go to the area that I know has the big flat on it. We'll talk about getting offshore and fishing the water that is on that ledge. I'm already assessing that I like the next point better than this point. And the reason that I like this next point is because the way the wind is setting up on the island. Let's get in here and fish this real quick. Maybe I'll get lucky with the fast-moving topwater bait and find a bite that I'm not expecting. Okay, we're approaching that island point that I said that I wanted to fish. So we're going to start trying to focus in on our casting and just fishing it quickly. Looking for that aggressive fish to just come out, take something and make a mistake. I want to hit that point up there. That's a tough cast because you gotta You gotta account for the wind, but that's a pretty good cast. It's coming right off of that point. I like that. If there was an aggressive fish in there, I would get it. Now I can see vegetation. I can see the brown water underneath it, and I'm throwing right on the edge of that. I like that cast. That's coming right down the edge of that thing. If there's a fish on the edge, it'll pick it up. Right now I'm looking at the angle of the tulies, and as I get up here a little bit more, I can throw it into and up on this flat. There could be a fish holding in there. That was a good cast. I see another point up in front of me. We're going to throw out over casting the point or my target and pulling it into the target. That's always helpful out here. And as I'm pulling it past all of this submerged vegetation, every one of those is an ambush point for a fish. Always good to throw a topwater on the delta because you never know when that big fish is going to come up and just smack it. Okay, I fished this whopper plopper through enough water now that I know that they are not real aggressive to this thing, and I want to try another bait. The bait that I'm going to switch to is a chatterbait. So now we're going to really start thinking about fishing this edge. Hopefully you guys can see the point down there. I've got about 100 yards of island here, and what's out on this side of the island, let me turn around, is a big flat. I've got maybe 4 inches of water to maybe a foot of water. Out in front of me is the edge, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the camera and I'm going to show you my graph, and I'm going to go inside and I'll show you exactly where that edge is and where I want to be on the edge. Thank you guys for staying with me on this video. The next couple minutes is the heart of the video, and this is why I recorded this video. We just fished a flat off of an island and we haven't caught any fish. This happens all the time out here. We're all running the banks, we're all fishing shallow water, and when we don't get bit, we think it's because of the tide or the bait that we have. We move on to a next location, we fish another bank, or we find another flat and we fish shallow water again. I'm going to show you what I do in these situations where I've just run through a flat, whether it's off an island point or a bank or whatever. And instead of leaving, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go offshore and I'm going to show you how I find these drop-offs. Get it in your head to look for new spots, look for these deep ledges that are offshore and fish them a little bit. You don't have to catch a ton of fish, just catch a couple of fish. That's going to give you the confidence to start doing it more and more, and I guarantee you, you'll start catching more fish when you move offshore and you find some of these drop-offs that 90% of the people out here aren't fishing. So in this case here, this is the island that we're fishing down here, and you can see it's got tulies, it's got floating vegetation, it's got a lot of subsurface vegetation. Out in front of me where I'm pointing out here, it's all maybe 1 to 2 or maybe 3 feet of water because it's super high tide. We've just fished that, we haven't caught anything. So this is what I do. So when you see my graph, we're going to start in just about 5 feet off of this surface vegetation, and we're going to go straight offshore. I'll show you that drop off, then we'll go offshore and I'll come into shore and show you the ledge that we come up on, and then we'll talk about how we find them and how we fish them. So give me a minute, we'll set up and we'll check that out. Okay, we're starting off just about 5 feet off of the ledge of the surface vegetation, right up alongside the bank, and you can see it's maybe a foot deep here. I am taking my boat straight off the bank, and we're going to look, and you're going to see kind of a gradual little drop down here. This is all the flat. We're talking about maybe 2 to 3 feet of water. We are probably at this point 1 to 2, maybe 3 casts offshore, and look what happened. There's the drop off right there. That's where we want to be fishing. That's where the fish may be holding. I'm going to come out here and I am going to get out in the channel a little bit so you guys can see. Now we are in the channel. I'm turning the boat around and we're going to head back in to the shore. We're heading right back over where we just came from. And as we come up here, there it is. We start coming up, and this is the ledge. This is where we want to be fishing. Now we are back in on the flat. Let me pull the boat over and we'll talk about exactly what we did, and we'll go over how to fish this, and we'll wrap this thing up. All right, fellas, that's as simple as it gets. When you're fishing the bank, you're not catching fish, simply go straight offshore, look at your graph and see where that first ledge is. In this particular situation, we have maybe 1 to 2 feet of water at low tide, probably more like 6 inches to a foot of water at low tide. And then at high tide, which we are at right now, we've got a couple feet of water, maybe 3 feet of water. Now, high tide, a lot of these fish will flood into the flats, and that's where we'll catch them, close to shore. But what's happening now is, or what happens as the tide goes down, those fish that you normally catch inside come off to that first drop off. Now, let me just turn the camera around here, and I know I've got some overexposure, and we'll try to get that taken care of. We got the wind blowing it. It's been a tough day to film anything out here. But we were on this bank. I started way inside. We went out about 3 or 4 casts way offshore, and that's where we found the ledge, which is way out there, and it looks like it's almost in the channel. I didn't fish it today. I have caught fish out there on this particular bank, and I've caught fish on several areas like this. And basically, when you get out and you find that ledge, you want to fish as close to that ledge as possible. If you are up on top of the ledge, you can throw worms, you can throw chatterbaits, you can throw topwaters. As you go over the ledge, you can still throw your chatterbaits, you can throw crankbaits, jerkbaits, exposed hook applications. You never know where they're going to be on that ledge. They could be just on the outside, they can be just up on the inside, but they're going to be very close to that ledge out there. So lots of different baits you can throw out here, whether you are on top or on the side. It doesn't have to be the baits that I use. I just want to let you guys know that when you're fishing these banks, go offshore, find that ledge and fish that ledge. And again, we talked about mentally what you need to do to become a better fisherman. The big thing that I can't sell you is confidence, and how you gain confidence is just getting it in your mind that once you fish these areas, I'm going to go offshore and look around to see if I can find one of these edges. Whenever you find that edge, fish it. You don't have to catch 20 pounds of fish on that ledge. All you need to do is get a bite, catch a couple fish, and believe me, you're off to the races, because at that point you know, hey, there's fish out here, I can catch them. I'm going to put a little more time into it. When you start putting more time into fishing these ledges, I guarantee you, day in, day out, you're going to put a few extra fish in the boat. There will be days when all of your fish will come from these ledges, and there will be days when you catch all your big fish off of these ledges. If you have any questions, hit me up in the remarks. I'll try to answer them. And I want to thank you guys so much for staying with me through this long video. And I think if I explained everything halfway decently, it's going to give you guys some ideas on what you can do to come out here and catch some more fish. So thanks a lot, and get out here. I'll see you on the ledge. Until then, good luck.